Thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm Sue Dengenis, the Director of Marketing for Synchro Software. And last week we also had some problems with GoToWebinar, but those problems have been remedied. So hopefully today will go very smoothly. Just a few comments before we get started. Those of you in the U.S., well, and really anywhere, but we do have a 2-day Synchro Pro training coming up in Boston, November 9th and 10th. Details are on our homepage, but happy to send out details if anyone is interested. We also have training coming up in Sydney, Australia, LA, California, London, and Shanghai. So if you're interested, get in touch. This session is being recorded, and you will get a link later today. And last, I just want to encourage everybody to submit questions throughout, and we will answer those at the end. Today's webinar is Why Use 4D Design. James and his team at Beck have been using Synchro for many years. They have a lot of great insights, and I'm sure you'll get a lot out of today's presentation. I'd like to introduce James. James started at Beck, I think back around 2007 as a field engineer. Is that right, James?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and he's had a variety of roles since that time. Currently, he's managing processes and workflows. He's responsible for scheduling, 4D standards, and project health monitoring, which is really interesting. And maybe if we have a few minutes at the end, James can tell us a little bit about project health monitoring. But I'm going to turn it over.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's they've done some cool stuff. So if we have time, we'll maybe touch on that. But I'm going to turn it over to James and let him get started. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been with Beck almost 10 years. I started off actually pushing a broom as an intern. But anyways, today I run processes and workflows like Sue had said for the company, and Beck is a design build commercial construction or design build firm, and we do museums, high rises, life sciences like pharmaceuticals, medical, you name it, anything in the commercial sector we touch. And we are now getting to a point where due to speed, which we all know about, speed is very important for owners and just in general, whether it's making financing payments to turn a building over at a certain time. Either way, what's important is that we have to mitigate that risk that we have and understand what's going on as early as we possibly can before we start building. Fortunately for us, because we're a design build firm, we can leverage the knowledge of our designers early on in the process. So here's just a nursing school that's a renovation as an example. This one was just done a few weeks ago. I was like, oh, I'll just use this. And we're just going to jump right into the actual 4D of it. So at Beck, what we're looking at right now is really utilizing 4D and virtual mock-ups. And a 4D schedule is effectively a virtual mock-up, and it helps us identify the assembly of a thing. We all know that. Helps us holistically understand what we're drawing. So right now, in design, after the recession occurred, a lot of people exited the design community. So there's this gap of knowledge sometimes between project managers and people coming out of college, where the new PMs, there's a lot of them are very young, and these are project managers on the architecture side, are very young, and they may not even have been taught how properly to, what to look for and thinking about constructability, and because of that lack of knowledge, you'll see a lot of times people complain lately about quality of documentation, or drawings that are getting out aren't what they should be, or not what they used to be back 20 years ago in the good old days. But I don't think that was the good old days. I think these are the good old days right now, because it's an opportunity to use 4D during the design process to vet out the constructability of what we're drawing in real time. And there is a point you have to think about of when can you start a 4D sequence, and it's very early on. So our process now is really once we start DDs, because you have to understand as an architect, your contract, your total contract relative to a construction contract is much less. Your fees are higher, but you don't, because your contract is much less, you have much less time to make mistakes. And if we have to redraw and redraw and redraw, we burn through our fee and we don't make as much profit. And the goal is to make money, right? That's why we exist. That's why we design and we build because we love and we're passionate about it, but we have to survive too. And so thinking about how to increase the profits, which is range, true for any architecture firm, is how can we increase our profits and reduce our risk? And that, one of those things is through 4D. So I'll go ahead and just jump on in. So, this is a building that is just came out of conceptual into, or SDs actually just into DD phase. This is a nursing school, and you can see there's auditoriums in here, a stairwell, lots of different spaces. One thing that's great about Synchro, or just looking at this right now, is obviously I'm not in the Revit model. We use Revit as our main authoring tool, but how fast you can fly around, and you can see the materials. So I'm going to show you, as we built the 4D sequence, and this is kind of a high-level thing, we were noticing some issues. So if I we'll do this really quickly, set the appearance profile to be transparent. And that's just symbolizing abatement going up. So right, we already have a 4D schedule. This is things that you've all seen. And it helps because as we build a schedule in construction early on, if you build it during the design document stage or the SD stage as best as possible and start assigning tasks while we're drawing, we'll start finding issues. So I'm going to take you to one of those right now. I go to the viewpoints and we'll activate the selected view. So here is stair steel. And you can see the stair steel is obviously to support a monumental stair that's in the atrium of this building. Now the issue here, it looks fine right now, but as you start investigating the stair, when I'll activate that selected view, you can see that the tube steel is coming through the finished floor. So here's what's important. This is like, well, yeah, I could run this maybe in a clash detection, maybe, but you don't. A lot of times we don't start opening up Navisworks and validating until like construction documents are done, or 50% construction documents are done. And right now we're so early on in design. This is really just visually catching issues because when you're building a 4D schedule, you're looking at every stairwell, hallway, and you start looking and seeing, oh man, this certain thing looks wrong, or this thing certain looks right, and this is one of those things that was just a miss, and the structural engineer actually right now is having to redraw and actually we're having to rethink how we build these stairs because it's probably not working. And even you can see on the top level, the stair is coming through the carpeting. Obviously, and the steel support, obviously that's not going to work. So catching this early on, again, saves us fee because when you're heavy into the design phase, your whole design team is there. The minute we get into finishing up on construction documents, or the design team is done with construction documents, about half of that team or more is gone, and they're working on the next project. So when you're in construction and you're trying to write an RFI, your RFI may not be going to the best person, because the person who may have designed this may no longer be on the job. So that's why it's also best to identify issues early. Another thing is, again, I'm using viewpoints in Synchro. It's very nice. I'll show you how I do that. Unless you already know how to do it, I'll show you in a second. Here in missing glass, okay, so we have glass handrails, and they're kind of hard to see. Are we far enough in? Yeah, it can barely see it. You can kind of see right there, there's a glass handrail, but on this side, there's actually a missing glass handrail, so we have to detail for that, just as an example. Next thing, I activate in a selected view. So what's nice again with Synchro is, when you're validating design, I can see all these things. This is structural steel, because this is a renovation. We have to actually add additional structural steel in the basement to support all of the new weight that's getting put inside the building. Let me put the original transparency here. Do that, and then also we'll turn off the skin. So yeah, obviously when we export out of Synchro, it's very important when you're exporting out of Revit, or if you're using a Revit plugin, to do it by views, because you want to be able to isolate and turn things off. You can set filtered views inside of Synchro as well. It's just easier because it's a one-stop way of pushing views out of Revit. It makes it easier, right? I don't have to manually do those inside of Synchro. So here's a piece of structural steel that's bleeding through the structure, and this is new. Obviously, it's not going to work because that is a part of a stair, and this existing structure is not going away. So that detail, that can't work. So these are all things, again, to validate why you are in design. And there's always going to be things that are going to get caught, and this is not against any designers. So for instance, at Beck, we have a really great relationship with our design team, and we know everything is constantly changing every day. So, but by catching this, we can focus and make sure that they're not missing some major problem ratio that'll burn us while we're in construction. So let's see what else we've got. So viewpoints. Okay, yeah. Here's another one. The door frames clash with the, I've got that turned off. The door frames clash with the existing structure. So you see this. So this door frame is too tall for the existing system that's in, right? So and it's common. So we just need to make sure to drop those things. So think of 4D and design almost as like redlining a set of architectural or just a set of construction drawings prior to them getting submitted for permit or getting issued for pricing. And it becomes very valuable. And then I guess another activated selected image is, you can see this is a new curb that's getting to be poured in a parking deck that's below grade, but that's not going to work. So the nice thing with Synchro and with the 3D engine is, I can see constructability issues that may not get picked up in Navisworks. So these are nice things to catch it may not get caught from clash detection that you can catch right now. And again, when you're building a 4D schedule, you're really looking at all of the building. So you're much more likely to catch a lot of constructability issues that are in design early on. And I guess, I know it's 13 minutes. I could talk more, but frankly, I wanted to leave the other period of time, next 15 minutes, to up to any questions on workflows and anything that you questions on maybe things that we've run into from you all. So.
Okay, great. So yeah, we encourage everybody submit questions, processes, workflows, anything where James may be able to shed a little light, help you out. It's nice for him to share all of his experience. While we await a couple questions, do you want to just briefly describe what you do with regards to project health monitoring? Can you share that with us, or is it Perpall?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So at Beck, we've deployed Synchro company-wide, and about 3 years ago, I was just I was a scheduler, and I realized that with all the schedules we have in the company, there was a lot of exposure, and we didn't really know how healthy our projects were, because prior we were uploading PDFs to a database, and that's what operations managers would look at. They would look at the end date on a PDF and say, oh, my schedule is on time or it's not, or what's slipping and what's not slipping. But that doesn't tell you anything. And so, because we had Synchro and we do have P6, but looking at what existed for monitoring health, there wasn't something that really fit for us. And because we use multiple scheduling softwares, but we use Synchro quite a lot, we needed something a software that could read any type of scheduled file. So for us, we developed our own internal application between me and Brian Mumway, or Brian Mumway and me. I'd say that because he was from IBM and he is a programmer. We developed a scheduling dashboard, and you can upload an MS XML file. We're actually expanding the file types now, but an MS XML file, when it's exported out of P6 or Synchro, it doesn't change the duration, because sometimes if you've ever used Microsoft Project between P6 and Microsoft Project, or the durations will change because they schedule differently. One schedules by hours, one schedules by days. P6 schedules by hours, and so does Synchro. So, but when you export into an XML file out of Synchro, so in Synchro, I would literally just come in here, file, export, Microsoft MXL file. You have to follow a schema, so there are rules to, if you export an XML file out of Microsoft, whether it's P6 or any scheduling software, you have to follow a certain schema, and they all have to follow that. So we really like Synchro. We like the usability and easeability of the program in some ways, that it's just intuitive in a lot of ways to use. So we were trying to figure out what can we export out of Synchro that will read into a dashboard if we were to build one, and that was an XML file. So here you'll see projects, and we've got some that are behind because we want to know, and I'm like, I'll be completely open, like you see these, but we can like make that up. It's not an issue. This one's like waiting on a change order, and we filter by region, type, et cetera, et cetera. I guess if one is uploaded, if there's multiple uploads. So here's a project, and every time you do an upload, you can see the audit details, and we're tracking a lot of things: completion, audit, et cetera. So very interesting, very useful, and it has passively, like all of our teams, everybody gets to see where there's, like, how is their schedule really tracking, what are the details, like how many predecessors have negative lag. You know, we read things like, we have a scheduling policy at Beck, but the problem with written policies is nobody reads. Nobody reads policies, and you shouldn't pretend like you write one that it's going to, if you implement it, everybody's going to follow it, because it's just not the case. So how can you passively keep people following your policies? And so we built this dashboard and have those policies built into the dashboard. And we read things off like missing milestones. Are we missing substantial completion? When did we upload the schedule last? Because we know we have rules where you need to have your data date. You have to have the data date updated every 30 days. So if there's a difference between this and this of 30 days, the schedule goes red because we're saying we haven't updated the schedule in a month. The schedule should be updated like literally as much as possible, at least once a week. If I'd do it more than once a week, but at a minimum, at least once every 2 weeks. And we upload here, and yeah, so.
Yeah, so it's all about the data today. It's there. There's lots of things you can do with it. These guys are really creative and good technically, and have been able to customize things that work for them. So what you have to do what works for you, but I just wanted to point that out, and I appreciate James sharing that with us. We do have a couple questions. One is,
yeah,
are there any dynamic clashes that you identified, like crews working in areas at the same time?
Oh, dynamic class. Oh, yeah. So if crews are overlapping.
Mm-hmm.
So if we, yeah. So if we normally, like, how we do that is we assign activity codes by crew into an area. But in instances like that, like, so we're doing the Will Rogers Arena. It's an arena about in Fort Worth. And the answer to your question is yes. So a good example was, or actually even Linux Small is a good example. We were installing structural steel reinforcement below a basement, and at the same time we were having to install shoring on the floor at the same time right above it. But there was a problem. There was a space constraint. So because they both needed to install steel below in this area, so we did a 4D schedule of just the shoring, and we were building shore. Like when I say shoring, it's scaffolding. It's, structural scaffolding that's going to be like 4 stories tall. But when you're building 4 stories tall scaffolding, it's very heavy. So below it has to have steel to support the weight. The problem is we were also installing other structural steel at the same time, and we needed this scaffolding installed because we're installing these lights that were 70 feet up in the air, and the only way to build them is to build the structural scaffolding. So yeah, we built a 4D schedule for the structural scaffolding, and yeah, we use that as a way of figuring out the constraints of the area, and and we also built that scaffolding and did a 4D sequence because it was inside of a mall to explain to all of the retail tenants where the scaffolding would be at any period in time, so they knew how it would affect them as a tenant. And it's very valuable.
Yeah, terrific. Okay, and one more question. How do you communicate the 4D plan to the crew at the construction site?
Oh yeah, great question. So we actually run. So we've got a few 4D schedules out right now. We have a design build high-rise out in Denver that's just finishing up, and we use 4D to actually validate like pore sequencing and while like on site. So we that job maintained the actually here it is. Sure, I'll say that's fine. We actually used it to explain how we were going to build a building, and we did it in our weekly subcontractor meetings. And it really helped a lot. And a good example, when it pulls up here. I'll pull it up here in just 1 second. So we had, when we did, this is the high rise, we had made some decisions on how this is a parking deck would be built. So what's the, like how the pour sequence would go. And it ended up being that the contractor was like, no, we're not going to do it like that. Our crews don't, with the way your deck is designed, we can't build in that way. So we sat down with them and recreated the pour sequence for the parking deck, because nobody could really, they'd sent PDFs and nobody really could understand these marked up PDFs of what we meant by what they meant by the pour sequence. And in fact, what they sent us was actually wrong. They thought what they were sending us was correct, but it didn't, and ended up having too much overlap. So we use this weekly to validate actually our contract with the concrete subcontractor on a job site, and then we used it weekly to like track our updates, and I don't think, to show like where we were, were we slowing down on this job, and I guess, I don't know if you've all seen this where you can compare. I had an additional 3D window, and I choose to use baseline task dates, yeah. And we would, here we go, we'll do a comparison. We were doing that to say, hey, this is where you're contractually supposed to be at, but you're supposed to be here, and you're still down here. You need to speed up, and that would help them understand, wow, looking how far behind they were. And it was on them, because we had negotiated the contract based on this sequence of events and these durations. And if they're not meeting them, it's a good way of explaining, where is the schedule really at. So.
Yeah, it's terrific. Okay. One more question. Have you started to use Synchro's mobile app site to maintain the schedule?
So we are actually, we have not yet, but we have deployed Synchro company-wide. So when we make new deployments, I have to like test it out first, and this is the newest version of Synchro, and we are going to use the Synchro site on our next design build job out in Denver, and also one here in Atlanta. And because we're really excited about it, and we're being very intentional in our design build process so that we can make sure that the workflow for using site will work well. But I have not yet used it on a job. But to answer your question, we will this year, and I will have an update on that.
All right, we look forward to that. Maybe we do another webinar on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, that is it for the questions. Certainly, I know you can always submit questions to our team, and if James wants to make himself available for questions afterwards, you can do that. So we thank you for joining us today, and thanks, James. It's always good to hear what you guys are doing. You are doing some great stuff and interesting projects, and this perspective on using 4D during the design phase was different than a lot of people currently use, and so it's good to hear how other people are using things and the benefits you are getting out of it. So thank you for your time. Mm-hmm. We look forward to your speaking at the BIM Forum, are you?
Brendan is.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not another one of our guys. Yeah, but I will be there. So if you're at the BIM Forum, I'll see everybody there who is there. So.
Yep, we'll be there next week, and we'll have a booth. So anybody who is attending, please stop by and say hello. So just going to sign off and thank everybody. And James, any final words?
No, I just look forward to testing out the HoloLens. I'm excited.
Yeah, everybody, I know it's been a very enthusiastic response to that at the booths.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's good fun. We're showing some projects now. We were at the Lean Construction Institute with that, and we've got them out in California and in Boston now. So the interest is growing, and it's in the early stages, but making good progress. So All right. Well,
Right on.
thanks. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and please join us for future webinars.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Take care.
Everybody. Bye-bye.